What if I told you the plant you were warned about was never the real danger? That the true threat was what it could awaken inside you? They called it a drug. They shamed it, banned it, and buried its history beneath centuries of misunderstanding. But the question that echoes across time is this: why were ancient priests, prophets, and mystics willing to cross deserts and mountains just to commune with this plant? Why did they chant before touching it? Why did they pray before inhaling it? What did they know that we've been forced to forget? Because something isn't right. You felt it. The way society turns sacred wisdom into taboo. The way everything that opens your perception is labeled dangerous, while everything that numbs you is celebrated. They never feared the plant. They feared what the plant could show you. They feared that once your inner eye opened, you wouldn't be easy to control. And they were right, because this isn't just about cannabis. It's about memory, about the memory your soul carries. Of rituals in the dark, smoke rising in spirals, songs sung in frequencies that called spirit guides to descend. It's about visions that no scientist can explain, but every shaman understands. It's about the power buried in your breath, your intention, your silenced thought. So stay until the end. Because in this journey, you'll discover why your body was designed to work with this plant. Why the ancient texts called it the conqueror of suffering. Why secret government programs tried to weaponize it. And most importantly, how to return to its sacred path, not as an escape, but as a remembering. I've walked that path. I've inhaled without reverence and been swallowed by confusion. But I've also prayed before the smoke and watched the veil dissolve. What you're about to hear isn't theory. It's remembrance. And once you see it, you can't unsee. If this truth already resonates in your spirit, write in the comments, "I remember." And if your heart seeks more revelations like this, subscribe now. Our sacred mission is to reach 90,000 awakened souls walking this path of remembrance. Because to understand the power of this plant, you must first meet the messenger they tried to silence. Long before governments outlawed it, before laboratories reduced it to chemical compounds and pop culture turned it into a joke, cannabis had a name whispered only in sacred spaces: the green messenger. Not a drug, not an escape. A messenger. A living bridge between the seen and unseen, the body and the spirit, the question and the answer. And those who honored it didn't just use it, they listened to it. Because in the heart of this plant resided something far more ancient than the laws that criminalized it. A divine intelligence tuned to frequencies the modern world has forgotten how to hear. The Vedas called it Vijaya, the conqueror of suffering. Egyptian priests burned it during midnight rituals, believing its smoke carried prayers directly to the gods. And in the emerald tablets, Thoth himself speaks of a green gift that could awaken the eye of Horus. The third eye, if and only if it was approached with purity and discipline. These weren't metaphors. They were instructions, hidden in poetry so the profane couldn't misuse them. But the sacred would remember. You see, this plant was never meant for recreation. It was meant for revelation. That's why mystics fasted before touching it. That's why shamans chanted over it. That's why the smoke wasn't just inhaled. It was woven with intention, carrying man's inner questions upward like incense into the higher realms. The goal wasn't to get high. The goal was to get a lying dot. And yet, when modern eyes saw only leaves, modern hands stripped it of ceremony. They took the holy and made it hollow. And still, it speaks. Even now, even through the noise. If you've ever taken a breath and felt your thoughts go silent, your heart slow, your senses open, not in chaos, but in clarity, then you've already heard the whisper. But here's the part they never taught you. Cannabis doesn't give you visions. It removes the walls blocking what's already there. It doesn't fabricate magic. it reveals it. And if your body has always responded to it with a strange, sacred stillness, it's because you were never using it as a drug. You were remembering it as a key dot, and that key is just beginning to turn. For centuries, they mocked the mystics, called the ancients primitive, reduced chants to superstition, rituals to folklore, and sacred plants to narcotics. But time has a way of humbling arrogance. And now, slowly, science begins to kneel where it once scoffed. Because what the yogis, shamans, and priests intuited through spirit, researchers are now confirming through data. And the green messenger? It's speaking just as clearly in laboratories as it once did in temples. In 2021, Johns Hopkins University conducted a study that shocked the academic world. Volunteers who used cannabis in deeply spiritual settings, not at parties, not casually, but with intention, reported mystical experiences identical to those of lifelong monks. And it didn't stop at testimony. Their brain scans revealed alpha wave patterns, neural coherence, and emotional calm that mirrored decades of disciplined meditation. In minutes, this plant was doing what takes most people years to reach, if they ever reach it at all. Why? Because cannabis doesn't fabricate a new state of being. It simply removes the static. Like adjusting the dial on a radio, it tunes your mind to frequencies that are already there. You just weren't receiving them. Think of your awareness as a lens. Normally, it's locked on the material world. But with sacred use, the focus shifts. Subtle realities come into view. Insights emerge not from thought, but from knowing. Time slows. Space softens. And something within you begins to remember. Modern neuroscience now admits that this plant temporarily bridges the gap between the logical mind and intuitive mind. It quiets the mental chatter, allowing what Tibetan monks call rigpa, pure awareness beyond thought, to rise. It enhances pattern recognition, opens emotional empathy, and even strengthens left-right brain coherence, the neurological sign of holistic perception. But the ancients already knew this. They knew that when approached with reverence, cannabis was more than a plant. It was a portal. They burned it in temples, not for euphoria, but for elevation. They chanted as they inhaled, not for sound, but for synchronization. And perhaps most importantly, they fasted, purified, and prayed, not out of superstition, but because they understood. The spirit of the plant responds to the spirit of the person. And now, after centuries of forgetting, that sacred reciprocity is returning. But this revelation leads us to a dangerous question, one most feared to ask. If this plant can truly open such gateways, what happens when those gates reveal the darkness too? Prepare yourself. Not every vision glows with golden light. Not every doorway opens to peace. Sometimes, the same plant that lifts you into the heavens also lowers you into shadows you didn't know you carried. And in that moment, when the room feels heavier, the silence grows louder, and something in the darkness whispers your name, the true test begins. Because this is not about cannabis anymore. This is about you, your fear, your faith, and your response. Across centuries, indigenous shamans taught that sacred plants have spirits, not personalities, but frequencies. And those frequencies amplify what already lives within you. If you approach the plant with reverence, it magnifies that reverence. But come with fear, doubt, or chaos, and it becomes a mirror that does not flinch. That's why the high can suddenly turn to horror. Not because you summoned a demon, but because the plant is showing you the one you've been feeding. Tibetan Buddhists call these moments stern encounters, not hallucinations, but aspects of your own mind surfacing to be healed. It's the part of you that you buried, the pain you didn't process, the memory you tried to erase. And now it's here, standing at the threshold of your awareness, not to harm you, but to be seen, named, and released. Modern studies back this up. In 2023, researchers found that 68% of spiritual cannabis users experienced at least one intense, frightening vision, but those who faced it calmly often reported life-altering healing afterward. Not because the plant removed the darkness, but because it guided them through it, with breath, with stillness, with surrender. That's why ancient rituals included tools of grounding, salt to reset the nervous system, bare feet on the earth to re-anchor the body, mantras to stabilize the mind, and most of all, intention, the invisible compass that points the plant's energy toward healing instead of chaos. So if one day the smoke grows thick and the vision turns wild, don't run, don't resist. Instead, do what the wise ones have always done. Place your hand over your heart and whisper, "Show me what I need to see. Then show me the light." Because the scariest visions often hide the most sacred keys, and those who survive the void awaken with eyes that never close again. But this power is fragile. If misunderstood, it can break instead of build. Which leads us to the secret most users never learn. The line between revelation and ruin is not drawn in the smoke, but in the silence before it. Ancient cultures never approached cannabis casually. It wasn't a tool for escape. It was a sacred instrument, like fire or breath, one that could illuminate the soul or scorch the spirit, depending on how you played it. And the difference, more often than not, was dosage. Modern users often rush, consuming more than needed, mistaking intensity for truth. But the Egyptians knew better. In the shadows of their temples, they measured cannabis not by weight, but by vibration, enough to make the hieroglyphs dance, but not disappear. They believed the perfect dose wasn't the one that transported you elsewhere, but the one that kept your feet here, even as your soul soared. This sacred balance allowed them to access visions without severing their connection to the body, to the now. Scientific studies now echo what Thoth inscribed in mystery thousands of years ago. A 2022 paper revealed that combining cannabis with temple incense created psychoactive states unlike anything achieved through smoking alone. And yet, none of this worked if the user wasn't ready. That's why shamans would fast for days before a ceremony. Why they would cleanse their bodies, quiet their minds, and empty their hearts before even touching the herb. Because preparation was the true portal. Today, the ritual has been replaced by habit, the sacred space by screens, and the wisdom of dosage lost beneath clouds of overindulgence. But what if you return to the old ways? Try this. Before your next session, sit still in silence. Place your hand over your chest. Ask, what is the exact amount that honors this moment? Then, start with less than you think. Wait. Listen. Let the plant speak before you answer. You'll be surprised what rises when you stop chasing the high and begin receiving the message. Because when dosage becomes a ritual, not a reflex, cannabis becomes a key. And through that key, you may unlock something far more ancient than the plant itself. But even the perfect dose means nothing if the intention behind it is scattered. What you carry into the smoke becomes the shape of your vision. And that's what we'll uncover next. What if the missing ingredient was never the plant, but the sound that surrounds it? Long before modern labs tried to extract meaning from molecules, ancient mystics understood something deeper. Cannabis doesn't just respond to chemistry. It responds to vibration. And the most potent vibration known to spirit and science alike is the human voice in prayer. On a mist-covered mountaintop in Jamaica, elders don't pass the herb in silence. They sing. They chant. Jah Rastafari. They intone, not as ritual, but as activation. Because they know that cannabis doesn't open the door on its own. It waits for sound. It waits for intention. And the moment that sacred frequency is spoken into the smoke, The ordinary becomes divine. Modern neuroscience is finally catching up. Studies from Berklee College of Music reveal that chanting at a frequency between 110 and 115 Hz, the exact tone used in Rastafarian rites, makes your brain 30% more receptive to THC's effects. But not just any effects. Spiritual ones, visions, insights, peace. That means the same amount of cannabis can carry you further if your voice is aligned with your purpose. So what are you saying when you inhale? Most people consume in silence, or worse, in chaos. Loud music, violent lyrics, meaningless distractions. And then they wonder why the visions turn dark or vanish altogether. But the elders never allowed such noise. They used only the purest sounds, hand drums, breath, names of God, because they weren't trying to escape. They were trying to remember. Try this ancient technique tonight. Before inhaling, close your eyes. Hum softly 3 times at your natural tone. Feel it echo in your chest. Then speak a single sacred word as you exhale. Something like peace, light, or truth. Not as a command, but as a calling. Let your voice become a bridge between you and the unseen. Watch how the smoke changes. Watch how you change, because the plant listens, not just to your breath, but to your belief. And in the realm of sacred plants, your frequency is your passport. But intention isn't just about sound. It's about the field you create, the space, the energy, the protection. And next, you'll discover why some see angels, while others see shadows. You're sitting in silence. The air feels heavier. Shadows seem to move where there should be none. And then, suddenly, a presence, a whisper, a chill that crawls up your spine. You weren't looking for fear, but it found you. This is the moment where many panic, blow out the flame, and vow never to return. But the elders would tell you, this is not possession. This is the test. Tibetan mystics call these moments Dern encounters, spiritual challenges, not external monsters. What we call demons, they call disowned pieces of our own soul. The parts buried in pain, shame, or fear, now surfacing because the sacred plant dared to turn on the light. You didn't summon darkness. You simply stopped hiding from it. And when you asked cannabis for truth, it answered with what you still needed to heal. That's why the ancients never consumed without protection. The Hikal shamans of Mexico always kept a bowl of salt close. They knew, and now science confirms, that salt carries negative ions, which help reset the nervous system and ground electromagnetic disturbances in the energy body. Just touching salt during a dark vision can restore clarity. The Hawaiian kahunas placed bare feet to the earth and visualized roots, a grounding ritual that lowers anxiety by over 40% in minutes. But what's most important isn't the ritual, it's the response. When fear rises, don't run. Don't resist. Instead, breathe. Ask softly within, what are you trying to show me? And then, now show me the light. Those who do this, who walk through the darkness without closing their hearts, often report the most profound breakthroughs. What began as a nightmare becomes a liberation, and still, preparation is key. If you enter sacred space with chaos in your chest and shadows in your thoughts, don't be surprised when the plant magnifies them. Cannabis is an amplifier. Whatever you carry, peace or panic, will expand. That's why ancient users always cleaned the space first. They burned sage, rang bells, changed their clothes. They didn't get high. They stepped into ceremony. So before your next session, try this. Burn sage for 30 seconds. Put on comfortable, light-colored clothing. Sit still. Place your hand on your heart and say, only show me what serves. My highest light. That's not superstition. That's spiritual consent. And it works, because as Yale researchers have shown, your expectation shapes your neurological experience. Your belief becomes the filter through which reality appears. Cannabis is not evil. It's not good. It is neutral, like fire. It becomes what you are. If you arrive as a temple, it becomes a prayer. If you arrive as a battlefield, it becomes war. So ask yourself, what energy are you bringing? Because next, you'll discover something most never hear. How sound not only protects, but activates an ancient state of collective consciousness. And how the elders of the mountain turned their smoke into sacred prayer. There comes a sacred moment in every seeker's path, when the plant that once opened doors begins to step back. The visions grow quieter, the insights less vivid. What once felt divine begins to feel distant. Many mistake this silence for failure, but the ancient teachers knew better. This is not the end. This is the beginning of integration. They called it the plant's farewell blessing. Not a rejection, but a release. Like a master who stops speaking when the student is finally ready to listen without guidance. And if you've reached this point, it means you are ready to walk in the light without needing the leaf to show you the way. The torch is in your hands now. Science is finally catching up. Long-term spiritual users of cannabis report what researchers call behavioral tolerance, not just to the high, but to the mystical states themselves. But the wise know this is not a chemical wall. It is an invitation to go deeper. Within, the ancient Taoists wrote, when the student is ready, the herb retreats. And the Rastafarian elders echo, the herb reveals. But discipline sustains. You were never meant to rely forever. Just as a child outgrows the bicycle's training wheels, the soul eventually must ride the wind on its own. That moment has come, and it's beautiful. If you felt the plant's silence, honor it with sacred stillness. Take a plant sabbatical, not as a punishment, but as an offering, a return to your natural rhythm, a pause to let your body recalibrate, and your spirit absorb all that's been shown. In this space, new all eyes may arrive. Blue lotus, cacao, breathwork, silence. You may find your dreams become more vivid, your emotions more honest, your heart more open. Because when you remove the training wheel, you begin to remember, the miracle was never in the plant. The plant only mirrored what was already alive in you. And if you truly want to know whether the teachings took root, here is the test. Go out tomorrow. Watch the sunlight between leaves. Listen to the rhythm of breath. Hug someone with presence. Sit under the stars without needing anything more, and ask, can I still feel the sacred, sober, whole, and awake? Because if the answer is yes, then the plant did its job. And you are now the temple. So if you've ever felt the leaf fading, don't chase it. Thank it, and walk boldly into this next chapter, where the magic no longer comes from outside, but flows from within. And if you've reached this point in the journey, write in the comments, I am the temple now. Let the universe witness your declaration. Let others feel that the sacred path continues, even when the smoke is cleared. And if you haven't yet, subscribe now. We are walking toward a collective awakening, and our next milestone is 90,000 awakened souls. Your presence is part of that unfolding. The next messages will not whisper from the leaves, but rise straight from the core of your being. We'll meet again, in the breath, in the stillness, in the next great remembering.